Kevin Zay. Earlier on in the current season of The Mandalorian, we learn that the whole masked Creed thing is connected to a terrorist cult on the Mandalorian home world. In your opinion, how closely related is Din Djarin's experience to finding out that there are many more of his kind who freely show their faces to anyone, to one's real-world experience of coming out of a cult mindset? Yeah, Kevin, that was definitely pretty interesting, wasn't it? For those not familiar, The Mandalorian is a Star Wars series that is on the Disney Channel and is a continuation, or is a sort of a new storyline within the Star Wars universe, following the events of the original trilogy, and before the events of the last trilogy, the horrifying, awful trilogy. And this follows a bounty hunter named Din Djarin, and he is a Mandalorian, and he's the title character of the show. And so he is running around with this helmet on, and he never takes it off. There's a code of conduct he follows, which is called the Way, there's a group that this Mandalorian code, or the Way, is part of, called the Children of the Watch. Okay, and this is the name of the organization or group that he is basically part of, and it's a pretty loosely knit underground organization. It's not, got a single leader and all that. It's kind of interesting the way it's sort of semi-loosely, very, very loosely organized, with really the only thing tying these people together is this code of conduct and an agreement that they will support one another if they get into trouble. And they are there to have each other's backs, even if they personally disagree or think that they're off the rails or doing something wrong. There is inner conflict within the members, but they have this overarching sort of purpose, and showing their faces to anybody at all, any living person, completely verboten. It's just one of the only real points of this code that we actually know about. This whole mythology or structure or dogma is very, very loosely put together on the show so far. We haven't seen a whole lot of real certain information about it. So it's kind of interesting, because it's like, well, is it a cult, or is it really just bordering on a very hardcore, honor-based, maybe Bushido, Knight of when the knights were in flower sort of code of conduct, right? Is it that kind of a thing? Because that's more how it's sort of presented. Although when he runs into this Bo-Katan character who lets him know, hey, guess what? All you guys running around with these masks on, with the helmets on, you never take them off. Yeah, you guys are part of some cult. The rest of us Mandalorians aren't doing that. That was a bit of a shock, a rude awakening to him. He had not run into any other Mandalorians except people who had been following the Way. And so he'd been raised thinking that the main character, the Mandalorian, Jin, he thought that all Mandalorians followed the code he followed, because he wasn't born on Mandaloria, or whatever the name of the planet is, and he wasn't raised there. Anybody can be a Mandalorian if they follow this code. So, or at least can be a Children of the Child of the Watch, right? Or be part of this thing called the Tribe, which was the group that took him. So, and like I said, it's a little loosey-goosey. This is not a well laid out, fully formatted, fully figured out sort of thing yet. So from the mindset that, maybe you would rather die than take your helmet off, which was an option at one point for the Mandalorian in one of the shows. And, you got a rather strict code there. Bushido, the Way, these kind of things. I mean, Favreau has acknowledged that he was influenced on writing this show very much by a Japanese manga and a series of movies and TV shows called Lone Wolf and Cub, about a samurai who had been set up and disgraced, and he had his child, his 1-year-old baby, with him. And they took off out of the imperial palace, and escaped, and lead this life having adventures and running around doing, good things. And very, very much similar to the formatting of how the Mandalorian put together with this, bounty hunter and this child, Baby Yoda. So anyway, a lot of similarities there. I think that his awakening process, which is what you're asking me about, really, now that I've kind of had to explain all this, I think that's the part that's been most interesting to watch for me, because he took his helmet off a few times after that, and clearly he is sort of more open to sort of thinking about, maybe this idea, this dogma that I've adhered to my whole life, maybe there are options for me here. And that's interesting, because it might open the door for season 3 to have even more of that. And of course, that would probably be a fairly sensible thing for that character to do, because running around keeping your helmet on all the time is a little uncomfortable and annoying. And it shouldn't really be that, this is it's a very, very arbitrary rule. There doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. So maybe at one, I wonder if there wasn't a period where, in just sort of wondering where this kind of rulemaking might come from. Remember that the Mandalorians and the Jedi are old adversaries or enemies. And so we've got this dark saber now in the mix, being added to the Star Wars mythology. But I wonder if maybe the basis for this rule or similar behavior from back in the day might have been because maybe their helmets were made out of a material that was somewhat force resistant. It wasn't really tested or talked about at all as far as mind reading or telepathy goes in the show so far, that a Jedi would be reading the Mandalorian's thoughts, at least not that I remember. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me. But I don't remember any Jedi probing the Jinn's thoughts. And I'm wondering whether a helmet made out of Beskar, the armor that they use, the metal that they use, which is resistant to lightsabers, it's the only thing that lightsabers won't just go right through. I wonder if it might be force resistant as well. And so the rule comes out of, they don't want to have the Jedi reading their minds, so they never take their helmets off. I'm completely making that up right now, but I guess we'll see what happens. Thanks for the question, Kevin.